Welcome to the Will Ventures podcast. Today we'll be interviewing Michael Levine, co-head of CAA Sports. Michael, better known as Vino, is one of the most influential people in the entire sports industry. Kushan and I are very excited for this conversation. Hope you enjoy.
All right, Vino, thanks so much for joining us on the Will Ventures podcast. It's been such a pleasure to get to know you over the years. You don't do a ton of these, so we do appreciate you making the time. I think to get started, just take us back to where you're from, where you grew up, your journey getting into sports, and just what kind of got you excited about the business world of sports, if that was ever a thing when you were young. Just give us a story.
Yeah, well, first I would just start by saying thank you for having me, and really why I'm here. Been really enjoyed getting to know Isaiah and Brian, who founded Will Ventures, and then with the two of you guys joining, our paths have crossed throughout our careers, and we've all become friends. I had a great experience working with Yash when he was finishing up his education on the MBA front, and we were working together on a project that the two of us loved. It unfortunately doesn't look like it's going to end up being what we hoped it would be, but nevertheless, the experience and the people that we were with made it worthwhile, and Absolutely. It's great to reconnect with you. And of course, Kushan, your family means a lot to me. Your younger brothers are old friends through my collegial relationship with Ankit, but I'm really fond of your family, and to be here with the two of you, working with Brian and Isaiah. The only time I do podcasts is with people that are important to me, so that's why I'm here.
Thanks, Vino.
So as far as my career goes, it actually all goes back to Peter Pan. I'm 54 years old, so in the early 90s when I was in college, I did not want to grow up. And I think that holds true to me today. But that's what drew me into sports. It wasn't so much that I thought sports would be a great place for a career. It was that I didn't want to force myself to do something in a real job. I didn't want to pretend to care about Wall Street or to be interested in real estate or to go to law school or pick another career. I just wanted to keep my childhood going in some way, shape, or form. As a kid, I played every sport I could. Played high school basketball and high school lacrosse. Ended up playing lacrosse in college at Cornell. And as such, got involved at the university in the athletic department, not because I was trying to build a resume, but because our coach forced us to sell programs at the football games and work phone-a-thon to solicit donors for the athletic department and help raise money for the lacrosse team. And fortunately, all of those experiences, when the time came, and a friend of mine from my fraternity brought home an application for an internship at CBS Sports, that was my resume. Selling programs at the football games was my first commission sales job. $2 for an Ivy League football program back then, and a 17-cent commission for me as a seller. I figured if I was going to do it, I might as well try and do it well, and then was asked to lead the program with one of my teammates as a sophomore, junior, and senior. We actually got a $35 salary plus a 1 cent override on all the freshman sales. So, and then we sold the programs at the hockey and the basketball games during the winter. So I had no idea what commission sales were. I had no idea that the work I was doing for the AD soliciting donors was really just like cold calling and sales. I was just trying to help my team. And it turned out that was great training. I actually enjoyed it. I never liked asking people for money, but I did love connecting with the alumni and really speaking to them about our program, which is what we would do. And our coach, who was an old school legend in the world of lacrosse, understood that, yeah, he was teaching us how to play lacrosse. Yeah, he was trying to raise money for the program, but he was also shaping us as adults and executives. So that's how I ended up in sports. that interview, that application that I filled out for CBS Sports, where I needed to throw a resume together and a transcript and write an essay and get a recommendation, came through. It was the only internship I applied for. I was painting houses during the summer with some friends. Actually, Joe Sandberg from JDS Capital, who you know. And, when I got to the office at CBS Sports, I realized this is what I would love to do for a living. Mm-hmm. That if I had to go to an office every day and commute in from my parents' house in Westchester County into Manhattan, that going into the offices of CBS Sports or someplace like it was energizing. I was doing any task possible. I was sent out to the airport to pick up Terry Bradshaw, who was working for the NFL Today at the time. I worked on Sundays that fall in the NFL studios, earning $60 logging games for Terry and for the rest of the NFL Today staff. And it just felt like a really dream scenario. I enjoyed it and I ran with it. And I basically went back to college my senior year and said, if I'm going to have to get a real job, I'd love for it to be in sports.
Love that.
How did you, one, I think we all feel fortunate working in the sports industry, and some of that energy that I sense from you, I think we've all felt. I'm curious, from that first job at CBS Sports to then CAA, like, how did you decide that representation was the right path for you, and what sort of drew you to that side of the business?
I didn't even know what that side of the business was. As the story goes, the woman who interviewed me at CBS Sports asked me what I knew about CBS Sports, and I told her that I'm a Giants fan. The Giants are on Channel 2, which is CBS. The Jets are on Channel 4, which is NBC. John Madden and Pat Summerall do the games for CBS Sports. And the TV just looks a little sharper on CBS than it does on NBC. Marv Albert's a little bit annoying, and the picture looks a little bright when I watch Jet games. And she turned over and said, that's about as good of an answer as a 20-year-old kid can give me. I got to find a job for you. And at that moment, I basically said to myself that if I'm going to get a job in the real world, this is an industry for me where I can answer a question honestly, not have to pretend to be something that I wasn't. That was important to me as a 20-year-old. It's important to me now as a 54-year-old. And I think that one of the things I like most about the sports industry is I've been accepted for who I am, warts and all. As for representation and what drew me to representation, nothing. I didn't even know what representation was. I didn't know what a sports agent was. I basically just wanted to get a job to move into the city with my friends and out of my parents' house. And back then you had to send cover letters and resumes via the mail. I had 9 or 10 people that I got from some Cornell networking alumni channel. The only response I got was from a guy named Art Kaminsky, who was a player agent in the NHL, the most prominent player agent in the NHL at the time. He had put the Olympic hockey team together in 1980 before anyone cared about American hockey players. And he also represented Eric and Beth Hayden at the Lake Placid Olympics. So turned out he was a fascinating guy. He was roommates with Ken Dryden, who was a storied NHL goaltender and was the color announcer with Al Michaels for the 80 Olympics. And Art had built a practice at a company called Athletes and Artists that was representing a lot of TV sports personalities, Chris Berman and Jim Lampley and Dan Deerdorf and Al Michaels and Ken Dryden, and then still had a hockey practice that was flourishing at the time. They were representing Brian Leach of the Rangers and Sergei Zubov and Adam Oates of the Bruins, and a pretty good stable of NHLers in the early 90s. In any case, he met me because I was a Cornellian and he was a Cornellian. And over the course of our conversation, he said, look, I don't know what I'm going to pay you. I don't know where you're going to sit. I don't know what you're going to do. But there's something about you that I like, and I'm going to take a chance on you. And I didn't ask any questions. I said, I'm in. As I was getting in the elevator, he asked me for my resume. I handed him the resume. He's looked at it. He said, oh, Dean's List, great. He then sent a photocopy of my resume. This was 7, 8 o'clock at night. He had kept weird hours. He was a late sleeper, and he worked into the night. And he left a copy of my resume for his partner and said, "He's hired. Handle this." It was a whopping $500 a month salary. So when I told my parents that I got this job and that it's paying me $500 a month, they were like, "That's not a salary. That's $6,000 a year. That's like a travel stipend." But they were proud. And frankly, working at a tiny representation firm that was second or third tier in comparison to IMG or ProServe or Advantage International, which were some of the precursors to today's companies. Actually, Advantage became Octagon, IMG grew and became WME. ProServe merged with my company and a bunch of others and became the Marquee Group in the 90s. Anyhow, the fact that it was a small place and I was hungry and 21 enabled me to get involved in things that I otherwise wouldn't have at a bigger, more established company. There was no HR. There were no computers. In fact, I didn't have a place to sit. I mean, there was two desks in an office and another chair. That a third guy. So there were two people who sat at the desks, a third guy who sat in the chair. I was given the space underneath the chair as my place to put papers. So I leaned on the radiator for most of the time and just peppered the guys with the desks questions about, "Hey, can I do this? Can we try that?" Finally, one of them who worked on a commission said, "Go, just anything you do, I'll give you 10 cents on any dollar we make." And that was basically all I needed to cut me loose, motivated by the commission rate and a hunger to win. And I started cold calling out of the phone book. No internet, no nothing. I literally went in the phone book. I had some friends from Cornell and from Harvard who were playing hockey for Team USA in the 94 Lillehammer Olympics, where I had been hired by CBS to return to CBS for a 75-day stint in Lillehammer in December and January of 93, 94. Anyhow, I called USA Hockey trying to get them to accept an offer that I had gotten from the Fleer trading card company to do a subset of cards for USA Hockey because I thought it would be cool to do something for my friend Ted Drury. And in any case, they said no. I offered him $30,000. He said no, and I hung up the phone and I said, "Okay." I told Fleer, no, it didn't work out. They said, "Well, why don't you see if you can get the Canadians to say yes?" So I called Team Canada, again, cold call, right out of the phone book. And back then, getting a phone number was like a big part of the game.
Yeah.
And Canada was like, "Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to do it. I'll do it for $30,000. I had $60,000 to work with. So I said, "Okay, great. We're going to do it." Then I called back USA Hockey, Brian Petrovic, and I said, "Hey, Team Canada is going to be in there. Your guys are going to be pissed because the Canadian kids are going to have trading cards in the subset of the NHL, and you're not." He said, "Oh, if the Canadians are doing it, then I got to do it." Yeah. So I was able to deliver both Team USA and Team Canada to the Fleer trading card company and $60,000, and we got 20%. So that was $12,000, and they were only paying me $5,000. So it was a good trade for the agency, and it was the start of my sales career.
Yeah. Maybe fast forward a little bit into joining CAA when you did. Maybe talk us through what went into that decision when you did join. Just what was the landscape like? And like in particular, where was CAA Sports at that time? Now we kind of know about its market position and its leadership, et cetera. But back then, what was it? Yeah. What were you good at? Where were there holes? Like just that decision for
So between that time period in 93, 94, which I was just sharing, and 2006, when I first heard about CAA and their interest in sports, I worked at that company that I was at, Athletes and Artists. It became part of a larger publicly traded entity called the Marquee Group. It was financed by a guy named Bob Sillerman, which then rose and grew into SFX Sports Group. And he bought 60 or 70 different companies in sports. It was really the first big roll-up to try and compete with IMG. In fact, David Falk ended up being the CEO. So we went from having second-rate broadcasters and hockey players to representing Michael Jordan and Patrick Ewing in the height of their prowess. So I learned a lot about the representation business. During that time period, I realized I didn't want to be a player agent. I was drawn toward corporate sales, toward media rights, toward consulting, events, and sponsorships, and naming rights was starting to emerge. And I really immersed myself in all those different parts of the business that were growing in the 90s, and really became a salesperson without my even realizing it. At SFX, we actually had an organized sales group led by a friend of mine named Cliff Kaplan, and we really did some interesting things, stole the naming rights to the Staples Center, amongst others. And before I was at CAA, I was working for a company called Van Wagner Communications, which had a small sports group that I joined right after 9/11. And they owned positions underneath the scores table in the NBA and college basketball and behind home plate in Major League Baseball. They had a company called Dorna USA, which sold the rotational signage. And I was pretty impressed when I got there and saw what they were doing. They were essentially a signage company that was using their positions to become a national media sales organization. And I leaned into making it a national sales organization. And we built it up to a really nice place over the course of 5 years. During that time period, the team and I worked with the 85 universities that we worked with to option the real estate on the nets behind the field goal posts. If you have ever watched a college football game, you've seen the All-State Helping Hands. That's the All-State Helping Hand field goal nets that we created in 2003 at Van Wagner Sports Group. We originally were planning to sell it, and we mocked it up with a target from the target, the bullseye. Yeah. And we went out to the Meadowlands and had Nick Lowry, who was a client of ours, kick into the target, and he loved it, and it looked great. And Target turned us down, but Allstate bought it unconditionally, literally, back in 2003. They said, we'll take it in every school you could get it for us at. And they've done an incredible job in the last 23 years of making it a full-service college marketing program with charitable elements and media rights and title sponsorship of the All-State Sugar Bowl and involvement in the CFP. And it is something that I still take great pride in. So I was pretty happy at Van Wagner. I had a team of about 50 people, a lot of friends that I had hired that were doing good work. So I had no interest in joining my friend Howie Newchow, who lived in LA and who was a dark horse candidate to become the head of CAA Sports in 2006. Howie and I had mutual friends. Actually, Paul Danforth, who is now my partner, my office mate, who was working as a chief revenue officer of the Mets at that time, reconnected me with Howie. And we helped each other at our respective jobs. We were both in our early 30s. We were both leading profitable, rising sports companies. He was working for Peter Guber at Mandalay Sports, where they own 5 or 6 really profitable minor league baseball teams. And I was working for Richard Schaps at Van Wagner and building Van Wagner Sports Group. And Howie was in and out of discussions with CAA. He finally got offered the job after 6 or 8 or 9 months, and they offered it to him with someone else, a very prominent guy in our industry. But Howie had never thought about partnering with him. And when they offered him the job, he said, thank you, but no thanks. And Richard Lovett, who was a president of CAA at the time, said, well, I don't understand. You're a minor league baseball guy. Why wouldn't you take this job? And Howie said, this guy's great. He's smart. He's very accomplished, but he's a buyer. And in order for this to succeed, I need to be working with a seller because this is a sales task. And Richard said, wow, that's interesting. Do you know anyone that you'd be excited to partner with? And he said, yeah, I know this guy in New York. He's nobody, but he's great. And I have Howie to thank for thrusting me into the mix of this opportunity. That was December of 2006. And within a couple of weeks, he and I and my friend David Rohn had agreed to do take the leap together to lead CAA Sports. CAA Sports started in the late spring, April or May of 2006. They brought Tom Condon from IMG football, and they brought Casey Close from IMG baseball, and Pat Brisson from IMG hockey over, because Ted Forsman had just bought IMG from Bob Kane and Mark McCormick and the McCormick family. And there was a clause that freed those guys up to leave if there was a change of control. So they had these great player representation assets: Derek Jeter, Peyton and Eli Manning, Sidney Crosby in hockey, and they had their sights set on Leon Rose and LeBron James and more. We kind of were a non-traditional solution at age 34 and 35 to come in and lead this group. Neither one of us were player agents. I had some experience in the representation business, but I certainly had no aspirations to become an agent. So our plan all along was lead and try and support a group of the best player agents in each of these team sports, but build concentric circles around the representation business with adjacencies like sponsorship sales, media rights, eventually executive search, stadium construction, so on and so forth. So that's how CAA Sports grew. And that's how I got there.
It's an incredible story, and also speaks to your and Howie's relationship. This is almost 20 years ago, and over that time, CAA Sports has become a behemoth, and a very well respected and leader in the space. A lot has happened in those 20 years. I'm curious if there's a couple moments or decisions that maybe you and Howie made that you feel like have contributed to the success that CAA Sports has had. If you could just sort of walk us through a couple of those.
I mean, look, I think it started with that original premise of us wanting to both foster the core business of athlete representation by supporting the agents that we had, but encouraging them to work with one another as opposed to being elbows up like the traditional sports agent did. CAA's premise, predating sports, was information sharing is power. Communication internally is vital and essential for the ecosystem. And any client of the agency is a client of the entire agency, with the premise being that other specialists can come and help and lend a hand to an agent, so you don't have to represent somebody on your own. We bought into that, and then we bought into our own goals for ourselves, which was to earn the respect of the player agents by building some of these other ancillary businesses around the core representation business. And with sponsorship sales being my interest and my background, that felt like the right first place to grow. We knew it was very profitable. I also knew that very few agencies sold sponsorships well. And my experiences at the SFX sales team was a really helpful learning experience. And when I was considering the job, my friend Paul Danforth, who connected me and Howie, was the chief revenue officer at the Mets and was as good of a salesperson outside of my circle as I knew. And so when he was convincing me to take the job, I said, well, if you're so sure, then are you going to do this with me? And he said, I guess so. And so he was part of the business plan from day one. And I think that Paul and Howie and I all realized that advertisers and sponsors could buy from anyone in sports. There's a lot of good options. And we wanted to give ourselves a chance to win 51-49 loose balls, where if there was a chance for someone to buy something from us, they'd want to buy something from us because they liked us, because we had a good time together, because we wouldn't screw them. And that very basic business philosophy, be nice, have fun, attract people to you by being fun and having fun, because you can win loose balls that way. That still remains a core principle of mine as we're 20 years and 1,400 employees into it.
Yeah. Maybe talk a little bit about the evolution of the athlete and even brand and sponsorship consulting relationships that you've had. So 20 years ago, you get started with CAA Sports. What, and even maybe take us back like 5 or 10 years when you were in those pitch meetings, when you were talking to brands, you were talking to athletes and thinking about what's the best way to serve them, what are they looking for in return, and now fast forward that to today. Brands who are getting into sports, athletes that are thinking about representation, like what's that evolution been like? Like what's changed? What's been different? What stayed the same?
At its core, it's the same. I think these players all want to be stars and they all want to maximize their opportunities, which are short-lived. The ways in which they can have evolved. Mm-hmm. And obviously the biggest drastic change is their connection to their fan base through social media. Social media changed the athlete representation business, where during the Michael Jordan era, if we want to just sort of think about it in big swaths of decades, Michael was very private. He had even Tiger Woods way back then, who were at the top of the pyramid. They were very removed from their fans. They were out there on the court. They were out there on the course, thumping and fist bumping. But you didn't see them, fraternizing all the time. They were really selective and somewhat private. I think that next generation of superstars, LeBron, D. Wade, Carmelo, Chris Paul, if you want to use NBA analogies, they embraced social media early. They understood that being accessible, being visible, being out there wasn't a bad thing. It was actually a really good thing because they really built an audience and a fan base, which gave them real market power and leverage. And that all kind of came to bear for us as an agency during the lockout in 2010, during 2009, whatever that. Mm-hmm. We were representing LeBron, we were representing Chris Bosh, we were representing Carmelo Anthony, Chris Paul, many others. And we put together an alternative to the NBA season. It was called the Homecoming Tour, where we put games together with NBA superstars in Akron, Ohio, in Syracuse, New York, in Chicago, Illinois, in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and in Baltimore, where all those 4 guys were from. We got Google to spend $3 million. Google was introducing its video conferencing, the Google Meet. The Google Meets Homecoming Tour. They spent $3 million to underwrite this thing. And we had teams, we had uniforms, we had a plane, we had venues, and then the lockout got solved. We actually only did about 1 clinic in Boston, in Brooklyn, that actually 5-Star and JDS and Joe Sandberg sponsored. Young Zach Sandberg and his then younger brother, Max, played in the clinic. I think they were 12 years old or something like that. But that was an incredible moment for us to be tested as an agency on behalf of these superstar clients. Could we help them take on NBA team owners? And we did. And I think that was really a seminal moment. And it was also a year and a half before free agency in 2010. And if you look back on free agency in 2010, we were representing Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, and LeBron James. We also were representing the New York Knicks and Jim Dolan and Scott O'Neil, who was the president there. We were representing Chicago Bulls coach Tom Thibodeau. We were also representing Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley, who were the president and coach of the Miami Heat. And as you guys know, we sent the 3 of them together to Miami to put the Heatles together. And then Howie and Leon and Henry Thomas, who was Dwayne Wade's agent, and Maverick Carter and Pat Riley and Eric Spoelstra and Nick and Mickey Harrison literally put the rest of that roster together by making phone calls to some of our clients to see if they would. Udonis Haslem was there, and we put Eddie Curry on that roster, and Eric Anderson, the Birdman, and
Mike Miller was
Carlos
there.
Arroyo. Mike Miller was brought in. He was not our client, but became an important piece. So that was a real incredibly important moment for us as an agency. The lockout was important, and then following that up with the work that was done in the summer of 2010 really, sort of gave people notice that we were going to move markets in team sports.
Looking at the sort of state of the union today, and you mentioned social media as a big change that sort of changed the way athletes view themselves and their brands, and you guys work with so many different athletes today, and so I'm sure it's hard to generalize them all into sort of one persona, but I'm curious if there's one or two things that is top of mind for athletes today when they're working with CAA and talking with you. What's like sort of most top of mind for them?
Honestly, the challenge varies from player to player. But sky's their limit. I mean, we're working currently with Travis Kelce, and while he's still playing football, the guy's a media mogul, right? His podcast with his brother is incredible. He's going to have an important place in the NFL landscape of media. He will be, a featured face for one of the NFL partners moving forward. And, frankly, that's not atypical. Josh Allen is an important client of ours. We've partnered him with Skydance, and his production company will hopefully grow the way Eli and Peyton's grew with Omaha. We're working closely with Connor Shell, who runs Words and Pictures and left ESPN, and he's partnered with Chris Paul and their family's production company called ODIP Productions. And I would say that these days, endorsements are what they always were, which is important source of ancillary revenue. But in this last 10 to 15, 20 years since 2010, the athletes are thinking of themselves as owners and builders of new businesses. And I think that what kind of businesses they go into varies from player to player, but we spend a lot more time thinking about equity ownership, long-term build, because they're getting paid so much money for being on the field. They can take some chances and build over the course of their careers so that when they're done, they can have something like Omaha, as Peyton has put together. Really the gold standard of athlete media companies.
Maybe to segue from there, one relationship that's been particularly visible for you over the last few weeks is with the Hughes family.
Yes.
And what they've meant, obviously, to USA Hockey, the country broadly, but also to you and CAA Sports. Just, and I know you've been working with them for a long time. This is not like an overnight thing.
No.
I would love if you could
so
kind of
this is one of those great serendipitous moments that I can't do anything but smile about. First off, you should know that Jim Hughes, their father, has worked for CAA Hockey for a long time. He heads our player development group. He and his wife, Ellen, are relative contemporaries of mine. They are dear friends. They have raised their boys alongside our head of hockey, Pat Brisson, and his wife, Kim, who has a son named Brendan Brisson, who was Luke Hughes' teammate at University of Michigan. He was the 22nd pick in the NHL draft, the same year that Luke was the 7th pick from the Devils. I have known of the Hughes boys since they were 9, 11, and 13. And they were exceptional then. I didn't meet them until later, but they've become real important symbols of the family atmosphere within CAA Sports. And Jim and Ellen happen to be local based on the fact that Luke and Jack play for the New Jersey Devils. They're very close with my friend David Blitzer and his wife Allison, who own and run the New Jersey Devils. So it's really incestuous. It's really close-knit. And Jack and Luke and Quinn are so lovable. I think that the world now knows what we've been fortunate to know for quite some time, and that everyone in the hockey world has known. Jim Hughes has run a USA Select makeshift camp during the summers in Michigan, where he trains his boys and a handful of invited NHL guests. And it's not an accident that all these years later, USA Hockey is dominating the world landscape because of the time that this group has put in together over the course of the last 5 to 10 years. And you could feel the closeness of that team, the camaraderie that existed amongst the Kachuk brothers and the Hughes brothers and the parents who've grown up in youth hockey together. So, to see Quinn bury that game winner in the quarterfinals against Sweden, and then to watch Jack get his tooth knocked out and come back and get that golden goal. It was a dream come true. On a Sunday morning, it changed my last several weeks and suddenly flipped the switch of 32 years of experience to get me working the phones for these boys to see if we could make sure we did everything that we've been trained to do as a sports agency for these great kids and this great family in this unusual, unique moment. And it's been a lot of fun. And frankly, it's been really exciting. And it's really nice to see people and a family that you have so much fondness for succeed and thrive and be so beloved by so many the way that Jack and Quinn and Luke and Jim and Ellen are. So it's a dream come true. I'm not going to lie.
And I'm struck, on a personal level, the fact that you started your career off trying to get the USA and Canada hockey teams and getting their trading cards made. And now you're, this family, you're working with the best hockey players in the world on the biggest of stages. Just taking a step back on a personal level, like how does that feel for you as someone who started your career off doing that to now being here?
In Lillehammer, trying to use my credential to get into those USA hockey games. I'm not the biggest hockey fan in the world, just from a fan avidity perspective. I love hockey. I grew up playing on the pond, and Cornell's hockey team is really terrific. So it's been a part of my life, but as far as the big four sports in the U.S., it's probably the one I know least. But USA hockey for me is obviously very special, having been hired by Art Kaminsky, who built the Miracle on Ice and who I represented as a group back then in the early 90s. So to go through all of this time with these boys who I've had personal closeness to and bonded with it's really the best thing that could have possibly happened in my career. And I take so much joy. I saw them for the first time Monday, 8 days after the gold medal game. I was not in Milan. I went to Jimmy Fallon and joined them. And to be with the three of them and to be with Jim and Ellen at a place like The Tonight Show, where I grew up watching it, trying to stay up late to watch Johnny Carson, and see them as guests, it was a trip, and it still is. And watching them on Saturday Night Live, and seeing Jack on Pat McAfee's show, which I was so proud of, knowing Pat for as long as I did and loving the guys on the McAfee show the way I do. It's really an incredible culminating moment in my 32-year career. So I'm really proud.
Incredible, man! I could feel the energy just radiating.
And the cool thing about all of this is that I'm not even bragging or talking to you about all the deals we're doing for them. Like, that's almost secondary.
Totally.
It's vital, and we're not gonna sleep until everything is done and done properly. But it really isn't as much about the dollars and the cents. It's about the relationships. And honestly, I think that's, to me, what I love about the personal services representation business. It's a very transactional industry, but the relationships that I've been able to build over that time are real. Just like the relationships I have with your family, or that I have with the Sandberg family or the Blitzer family. It's nice.
Maybe transitioning a little bit to just the growth broadly in sports, particularly in the last 5 to 10 years. Companies have been public. There's a couple interesting trends that we've kind of been tracking at the more large cap scale, but thinking about, sports teams building out these bigger kind of real estate apparatus around stadiums and venues and trying to get fans to come in 365 days a year, not just for a baseball game or a hockey game, or thinking about different kind of LP structures and now private equity getting more involved in kind of team and franchise ownership as limited partners. Just how do you, maybe on those two trends, or if there's anything else that kind of comes to mind for you as you think about expansion of sports, where CAA's role has been in it? Is it a tailwind for you guys? How do you guys think about it?
Oh my God, 32-year tailwind, Kushan. Literally, I heard people say it's better to be lucky than good. I've been really lucky, and frankly, everyone in our industry has been lucky to be living through what has been a 30 to 40-year bull market. I hope it continues to last. It feels like it will last. I'm bullish to think that it will, but you haven't had to be that good to do pretty well in sports over the course of the last 30 years. I've tried to always work hard and factor in the fact that if the industry is flat, I still want to grow. So when you combine the tailwinds with hustle, you can really make some hay. And that's what we've been doing. I think that we believe at CAA Sports that we are trying to be the most prominent service organization in sports. And we believe that if there's a meaningful transaction in sports, we want to add value to at least one of the two sides in any given moment. Hopefully both. And sometimes it does work out that way, that we're able to add value to both sides. But we're doing our best with the 1,400 people we have out on the field globally to try and touch and add value to one of those two sides on almost any transaction that's taking place in any given moment.
You talk about adding value to transactions. One of the biggest sort of shifts happening in sports, in our view, I think, is the world of college. And I'm sure it's deeply personal for you, given your connection to Cornell lacrosse. I'm wondering if you can talk about, not just for CAA, but for you personally, how you view all the change happening in the college space today.
Very good question. And I have a lot of feelings that are mixed. First off, I would say I love collegiate athletics, and I always have. Having participated, I love what I took away from all that. I love being a fan. I love March Madness. I can't get over college football. I always liked it, dating back to the Keith Jackson days of, oh, Nelly, we got a hot one today. But I just found like this college football season, every weekend was must-see TV.
Yeah.
So I really feel great about the product. I know that college basketball has shifted from the time when people stayed in college for 4 years to this one and done, but I still find college basketball compelling. And I still think the way these kids play on a night in and night out basis is incredible. And I want to know who's good, who's going to be the next NBA star and what's happening. So I'm starting off by saying I love college athletics. I love the College World Series. I love the women's tournament, frankly. I love women's soccer. I love women's lacrosse. I am very concerned about the complexities that have come from some of the rule changes, most notably not NIL, because honestly, I believe NIL was a must-do for the universities. The fact that these kids who give so much to the university and who are generating so much revenue weren't participating was a crime. So I'm thrilled that these families are getting paid, are able to participate in the pie the way they deserve to. I do think the combination of the NIL rules and the transfer portal, or lack of rules around the transfer portal, and conference realignment, it's been a lot for the fan to digest, and a lot for the universities to handle, a lot for athletic directors, and a real challenge on coaches. You know, it's hard to coach a 19 or 18-year-old kid if when you put them on the bench because they didn't listen, they enter the transfer portal that night.
They might leave. Yeah.
That's no way to teach.
Yeah.
That's no way to coach. So I think that we need a series of reforms that we will get. But the nice thing is that there are underlying strengths that can carry us and keep us going in a successful way while some of these reforms take place.
It feels like, to play that back, the foundation is really strong. Some of these
Very
things are
strong.
still being worked out. How do you kind of think about CAA's role in particular around whether it's NIL, whether it's conference realignment, whether it's representing, was it schools, conferences, media rights? Like, what's kind of the role you guys play?
So, great question. And we've had a very long-standing relationship representing the SEC, who we're really proud of. We think they're the preeminent conference in collegiate athletics. We love Greg Sankey, who's the commissioner and who's done an amazing job. We believe the SEC continues to be in a position of tremendous strength from a competition standpoint, even if the field has been leveled a little by NIL and the NCAA ruling. But from an NIL perspective, we've been involved from the beginning, but we took a very specific approach, which was we aren't going to turn our business upside down to adjust to these rules. We're going to pay attention and we're going to watch what happens. And we're going to do what we have always done, which is wanting to represent the preeminent athletes in major sports, football and basketball, for their entire careers. So when the NIL rules changed, we were lucky enough to represent Bryce Young as our first NIL client. We did $5 million worth of NIL, actual name, image, and likeness deals with brands where we sold his name, image, and likeness. Was the original premise of NIL. 2 brands before he ever stepped on the field as a freshman for Alabama. And that turned out to be great for him, his family, and it turned out to be great for the brands that supported him because he became a big star and was the number 1 pick in the draft. That winter, we represented from Duke, Orlando Magic,
Paolo
Banchero. And the only reason I'm blanking on his name is he fired us after we did $7.5 million of NIL work for him that same season before he took the court for the Blue Devils. His parents were terrific and he was terrific. Another agency hired one of his friends and he ended up going to work with them, which I'm sad about because he's an incredible player. But that's crazy that I blanked on his name. He's an incredible player. In any case, what's happened since we represented Bryce and Paolo is that NIL has just essentially been a misnomer. Yeah. It's a pay-for-play free agency system that has enabled a lot of kids to earn real money. And I will say that we have expanded beyond that 1 player per season. But we only represent a few dozen athletes in football and basketball. And in each of those cases, the criteria, the filter that we're looking at is, do we think we can help these players over their entire careers? If the answer is yes, then we're just working with them sooner rather than later. Just to give it context, we've been working with a family called Mbakos. Mackenzie Mbako is a player out of New Jersey. He was originally a 5-star, signed to Duke. He ended up choosing Indiana and then transferred to Texas A&M. Great family out of New Jersey, 2 immigrant parents who I've grown very close to. We did a 7-figure memorabilia deal for them that first summer that we were representing Mackenzie. He was still in high school in New Jersey, and that was allowed. When I called mom and dad and told them about that deal, they were crying. And I said, this is our money, like over $1 million. Like, what do you mean we get to keep this? I said, yeah, it's yours. Mackenzie's earned this and he's going to sign autographs and be in collectibles. And she said, we can pay our PSE and G bill. I said, Daphne, not only you pay your PSE and G bill, you keep the air conditioning on all summer long. And the tears, the thank yous may have been the most satisfying moment of my career. And it brought home why NIL is so important. These are families. Mackenzie, by the way, earned $1.8 million this year to play for Texas A&M. So whether he thrives in the NBA the way we hope he will or not, his life and his family's life is going to be different because of the experiences he's had at Indiana and now Texas A&M since we started working with him. And that's really exciting and rewarding.
Yeah. College is one big change that we monitor at Will Ventures. The other thing that we've been very excited about is emerging leagues. And at Will Ventures, we're very excited to be partnered with Tomorrow Sports and Mike McCarley and Joey and the whole crew.
Is Will Ventures on the PLL cap table?
You're not.
Come on, guys. Brian and
the Ravens.
Brian and Isaiah, what are you guys doing? You need to be. I am a board member and a seed investor in the PLL, and I am bullish. Let's go.
I know.
Incredible.
I mean, with PLL and with Tomorrow, you were early in
seed
both
investor,
of those businesses.
Seed investor personally as well in the TGL and Tomorrow Sports.
And seeing the growth now of something like Tomorrow Sports, like gave you the confidence so early, pre-product, pre-revenue, to sort of invest behind that? And how does it feel now to see the business see where it is today?
Honestly, I give Mike McCarley a lot of credit. He stacked the deck in favor of the TGL and its success. When I say stack the deck, Howie likes to say, yeah, we like to feel like we're winning when we put our ball in the ground on the first tee, to use a golf analogy.
Yeah.
20% owned by the PGA Tour. Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy, completely bankable superstars as owners. Innovative product that from the moment I saw the PowerPoint deck during COVID, I thought it was pretty interesting. Made me curious, made me wonder what this would look like. And I think that's the premise that upon which we got involved. Mm-hmm. The other thing was we knew at CAA Sports that we could kingmake here. That we could effectuate the success to stack the deck in our own favor. And we were able to come through on all of our early thoughts. Sell the title sponsorship to Anthony Noto and his team, Lauren Webb Stafford at SoFi. Sell the media rights to Jimmy Pitaro and Burke Magnus at ESPN. Work with McCarley and our investment bank at CAA Evolution to put together 6 ownership groups of people that we believed were the right people for long-term success. Get a bunch of our athletes involved because we felt like this indoor golf, simulator golf, played to the amateur golfer who was a competitive athlete. So Mike Trout's and Shohei Ohtani's and Chris Paul's and Dwayne Wade's who love golf want to play in the TGL. And I really feel like the premise was great from the beginning. Mike and his team have executed. They've blocked and tackled the way they needed to innovate, to bring the thing to life the way that PowerPoint looked. And frankly, if you went back and saw what we shared with one another in 2020 or 2021, I can't remember when during the pandemic, but I remember walking outside my house when I first looked at it. It's exactly what it was meant to be. And that venue, the SoFi Center, is magical. It's really a lot of fun. And I really think we're just scratching the surface. I want to see team owners from Boston play against team owners from New York who are celebrities. I want to see, all sorts of silly season type stuff because we can all hit it to a screen. Yeah. And that's what's great about golf, the handicap system, and it's very approachable and inclusive and fun.
What are you thinking about, 2-decade career at CAA now, the future of the sports representation business? What's got you most excited maybe at CAA, in particular in sports broadly, about what do the next, handful of years look like? Like, how do you think about whether it's a global expansion and taking more of your athletes or brands abroad? Is it getting into new services and products around sports? Just curious, like, as you guys think about it as a leadership team.
Yeah. So, look, you asked about representation. I think representation is what it's going to be. It's going to continue to evolve and ebb and flow as it has over the course of my 32 years in the business. I think for CAA Sports, what we're always trying to do is grow. And we recently acquired a company called CAA Sports, which is a really impressive management consulting firm that was centered and headquartered in Riyadh and Dubai and London and Singapore. For us, we were never management consultants by trade, but we're doing a lot of advisory work. We're, whether it's CAA Evolution, whether it's our media rights group, whether it's our brand consulting group, we're advisors generally. So that was a very natural fit. What we liked is that they are working on behalf of rights holders. Historically, our biggest advisory business has been on the brand side or on the team owner side. CAA Sports is doing commercial analysis like we've been doing, but just haven't been getting paid for. And the match geographically for where we want to grow. There's so much importance in the Middle East these days. We have 100 people in the Middle East, in the region, which for this moment is a little scary because there's, legitimate danger. So far, everyone's safe. But we believe over the course of the next decade, you're going to need to be there if you want to be a global force. Same thing as what we've seen in Singapore. We feel like Singapore is a really safe, stable place to do business in Asia. And we've grown a really nice business there. We've expanded with Formula One and with global soccer, and we've let that sort of be our tour guide around the world. So we're pretty excited about the global growth of CAA Sports in the next 5 to 10 years. 5 to 10 years ago, our revenue was probably 95.5 U.S. versus outside the U.S. I think at this point, without knowing exactly what it is, it's closer to 60-40. And we think that's going to continue to even out. So we're not going anywhere here in the U.S., but we do believe there's a lot of opportunity for growth outside the U.S.
Just in the last few minutes, would love to, we've covered a lot of ground on the sports business side. Would love to sort of bring it back to you as an individual and the amazing career you've had building CAA Sports over the last 20 years. I'm curious, when you think about legacy, both for yourself and for the firm, what do you want that to be, and sort of what does that future sort of look like for you?
Start with my feelings about CAA Sports and CAA generally. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary as an agency last year, which is pretty remarkable. And CAA Sports is coming up; it's its 20th anniversary, so that's pretty neat. I find when I look around the office or I look around our company, I'm in awe of many of the young people that started right out of college working for us and are now having profound impacts on our business, whether that's your brother Ankit, whether it's Alexa Cook, whether it's Austin Brown, whether it's Aubrey Curtis, so many others, Matt Riccotto, Andrew Nicario, and Ryan Hamill, who run our baseball group. Watching them grow over these 20 years has been unbelievably rewarding, more rewarding than any deals that I've ever done. And my hope for us as a legacy for the business is that we can continue to sustain our position as leaders in the service and representation businesses and continue to reputationally leave partners that we work with, buyers we work with, and clients that we work with feeling good about the work we did for them and with them. Personally, I try not to think about professional legacy. I don't know what that means. I really am spending a lot of time enjoying my children. My kids are 22. My daughter's 22. My son is 18, and my youngest son is 14. And they're all at incredible stages in their lives. My wife and I are still very happily married after 24 years. And to me, they're my legacy. And that's what I hope. I never wanted to be of profile. I never wanted to be famous. I just wanted to be like my dad and famous in my own house, and revered and loved by my kids and my wife. So far, it's going all right. And I just want to keep that going. And then professionally, if I can continue to work with this incredible group and so many clients that I love being around and working with and for, that's plenty for me.
Vino, I love that.
Thanks,
That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We'll hit you with a couple rapid fire and get you out of here. But on behalf of the entire Will Ventures team and Yashan, we really appreciate the time.
My pleasure.
Most memorable sporting event you've ever been to?
Such a good question.
You've been to too many.
The first time I stepped on the grounds at Augusta National, it's pretty profound. I just have a different feeling when I'm there to anything else. But I would have to say it would either be one of the two Giants Super Bowls over the course of my tenure at CAA, which I've attended, or any one of the Yankees World Series wins, which I've been in the building for. Those are pure like childhood fandom moments. The Giants game in particular, when they beat the Patriots.
Which time?
The David Tyree first time was with my dad, and I literally picked him up, and awesome. He says I may have bruised his ribs with excitement. Those are memories that really I'm a fan at my core, and I hope I always will be. The Giants, the Knicks, the Rangers, although now the Devils, and the Yankees just move me in a way that's childish.
That's why we love sports.
Yeah.
I love sports. Which athlete recruitment to CAA was the most intense or memorable for you?
Oh gosh, that's hard. Had some interesting times in the Derek Jeter business. I love Derek Jeter. I admire him. Dwayne Wade has been incredibly special for me and for CAA. He was young when we started working with him, and he was very much involved in choosing us. We had hired Henry Thomas, his agent, and he was at WME at the time, or William Morris, I guess is what it was called then. And Lisa Joseph, who has been his longtime manager, and I went to a meeting in LA with them, and I said, hey, if you're ever in New York, stop by. I'd love for you to see the office in New York. And 4 or 5 days later, Lisa called and said, hey, remember you invited Dwayne? Well, he and I are here. Can we come by? I'm like, sure, when? He's like, now. And they just popped in, and it was the official start to a 19-year relationship that I'm really proud of. I adore the guy. I'm in awe of him as a basketball player, but also as a business person and as a dad. Yeah. And as a friend. So I guess those would be ones that I'd point out.
Biggest mentor you've had in the sports business or just throughout your career?
I've been really lucky to have a lot of people looking out for me over the years. My dad's my biggest mentor, and he's not in the sports business, but he's who I wanted to be when I was a young kid. He's who I want to be now. He's 83 and enjoying this stage in our lives together has been super fun. And, frankly, that would have to be the answer.
Amazing.
What a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you
for the time.
Thank you, Vino.
Appreciate you both. Great questions. I hope I covered it all.
You did. And I mean, just to echo, I think Kushan and I, talk about this a lot, but you're one of the most well-respected and just nicest people in sports. And I think, we've come across a bunch of people over the years that have worked with you and know you, and everyone only has very positive things to say. So, and that's not an easy legacy to have. So we appreciate the time.
I appreciate you guys. It's an honor to do it. And I'm betting on Will Ventures based on the people that I know that are driving the ship. So continued success. Let's get you on the PLL cap table and let's go to the moon, so to speak.
Let's do it.
Right, thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for joining Kushan and I on the latest episode of the Will Ventures podcast. Stay tuned for even more episodes with builders across sports, media, and entertainment. And make sure to follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, and socials.